All right, sup hackers, it's your boy Rhinorator, aka Justin Gardner, or Justin Gardner, aka Rhinorator, whichever you prefer. And today we got another Caido tutorial for you. We're going to focus on replay today, which is like where I spend 90% of my time when I'm hacking. Maybe more like 70. You know, I spend a good amount of time in HTTP history as well. But I think it's really important to understand how replay works in Caido. So let's go ahead and jump into the details for that. All right, I'm going to switch to the Caido interface. And here we are in a fresh project. I've got replay set up here. And what I'll actually do is I'll just close all this out so you guys will see what it looks like when you start like an actual, fresh session here. So typically the best way to get requests into replay to start playing around with them is to send it from HTTP history. Okay, so I've got a browser open here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh and just grab this request. To get this request into replay, where we will replay it, modify it, tweak it, that sort of thing, I'm just going to go ahead and right click and hit send to replay in default collection. Or, you could press Control R, right, which is what I've kind of got the muscle memory for, and you'll see it populates right here into the replay section. Okay, awesome. Now we've got a request replay. We can sort of start tweaking it, sending it as we like, modify the path or whatever, test. And actually, we'll see we're getting a 304 here on the original page. So one of the things that you can do is just take away these if none match or if modified sense headers, right? So just basic interface where you can modify the content of the HTTP request. So I'm going to cover a couple different sections here. I'm looking at my notes. I'm going to cover organization. I'm going to cover some of the stuff you can do from the right-click menu, the editor, and then we'll get into really fun stuff like replay placeholders and shift agents, which we're going to integrate into replay. So first, let's talk about organization. So there are a couple key components for organization of replay tabs in Caido. The first thing you need to know is, of course, that you can rename these, right? And they get reflected over here. The other thing is that unlike in Burp or other software, if you remove something from this top tab here, it does not go away forever. You don't lose your screen real estate to a bunch of tabs piling up here as you do longer assessments. They can all be found in their collections on the left-hand side. So we click it and it reopens. If we send like a couple of these to replay as well, we can right-click and hit close to the right, close to the left, boom, and those are out of our interface here, but they're not gone forever. You can just click on them to reopen them. We also have the ability to sort these into collections, which are kind of like folders for various replay sessions. So if we click this little down arrow and click new session, then we can create a new collection. I'll often create one called gadgets. And then I'll also often, little subtle flex here, create one called vulns, right? Where if you've got a request that's definitely vulnerable, you right click, move, and then send to vulns, right? Something like this. And that will remind you to go back and write a report for it, or you'll be able to find your vulnerable request very quickly. You can also search through some of these, right? If we do HTTP forever, right, we can see right here, we've got this guy right here. That pops through. It also search for rename, right? It's got a bunch of different indices for how you can search through the requests sort of built into it. So this is a really good way to find your request super quickly when you're working within replay for longer assessments. All right, let's go into some other organization stuff that we have in replay. I already showed you moving. You can also, I did want to show this. You can just kind of like drag and drop these from one collection to the other. And then was there anything else here that I should show you? Obviously you can move to from here. You can duplicate, that sort of thing. If you do have the EvenBetter plugin installed, which is a bunch of like improvements on the UI to Caido, then you can also import and export collections. So let me go grab that and I'll show it to you real quick. So to install it, we go to plugins. We click this little box down at the bottom that says like, okay, yeah, we know that this could have malicious code. And we search for the plugin we want and click install. Right? So now EvenBetter is in our environment. You can see a bunch of different improvements that they've made to Caido here. And if we go back to replay, we can see that we now have this import and export collection button, right? So if I go ahead and click this, I'm not going to do it because it's going to like pop up my file explorer and everything, leak all my stuff. But if you press that, it'll download a file, and then press this guy, and it'll allow you to re-upload the file to sort of save off collections or transfer collections to your buddy or whatever it is you want to do. So that makes it really easy to, build out a full API. That's another thing I'll often do. I'll come in here and I'll be like, okay, this is the, api.sitetarget.com or something like that, right? And where I'll sort of document each of the requests that I go after when I'm hacking for this specific target in here. Yeah, so that's how I kind of use collections. Another really cool thing that we can do is we can do some organization with notes as well. So if we go to plugins and we grab the Notes++ plugin, let's go ahead and install that one right here. Here it is. Let's say we create a new note, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. And then we are inside of Caido here. You can go ahead and create a note directly within Caido and link the current replay session. So if you're on Windows, the command for that is Windows Shift N, right? It shows the current note that you've got selected, and you can just say, this is an example request. Right, this looks kind of like my notes, and it will automatically dump that into your notes. So if we go to EvenBetter, Notes++, you can see my note here, and then attach that specific replay context as well. And you can jump back into that replay context directly from here. So very useful for attaching and specific replay tabs and getting your notes nice and structured so you can go back and find the requests that you need. The next one in organization that I think is really pivotal is Shift, a plugin I wrote myself. Let's go ahead and start getting it installed. It has this feature called auto rename tabs. Here it is right here. Shift. Yep. And it will automatically rename these tabs for you based off of the path, so or whatever you tell it to do. So let me just update the path here to testing or whatever. I just pressed Control Enter to send that right away, by the way. And so you go into Shift. It's going to drop you into the tutorial. Okay. It went ahead and loaded up my API key already. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit, enable AI tab renaming. And I'm just going to reduce this to like maybe 5 seconds or something like that, right? And this is how it will do the renaming right here. This is the default. You can customize it however you want to use AI to do that. And then if we go back to replay, let's go ahead and just send this request to replay again, 6 here. And after a couple seconds pass, it will go ahead and automatically rename it. There it goes, right there, to get testing. And that is extremely convenient, so you don't have to constantly be like updating the name of your tab and doing that sort of thing. AI just takes care of that for you, and then it makes it much easier to find the requests that you're looking for. All right, let me take a look at my notes really quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. No, so that's pretty much everything that we've got as far as organization goes for replay. So now we'll kind of move into some of the features within replay that you'll need to really master this environment. All right, up next, let's talk about the right-click menu. So when you're here within replay, you've sent a request here. You get this right-click menu that has a bunch of different features. Of course, you've got your copy as curl, copy URL. This would output httpforever.com/testing in this specific example. You can paste or paste from a specific file. You can duplicate the request into a specific collection, right? That's useful. You can send it to automate. You can create a finding directly. Let me go ahead and send this request first so that it has the response. You can create a finding directly from here, right? If you want to notate some notes on a specific request and you don't want to use Notes++, findings work as well. You can replay in the browser, view the response in the browser. But one of the ones that I use very often is this toggle get post button right here, right? This will allow you to convert your request to and from post or get. So if I say like x = 1 or whatever here on this post request, and then I toggle, that pops up here, and then vice versa if I toggle back. The other one that I use fairly often is set request. So let's say I have a specific URL that I want, like my testing website here. I can kind of put this in. Actually, I don't know what's going to pop up under test there, so let me just make it random. And it populates that into the target here and also to the request body. Another thing you'll see from this right-click menu is the ability to trigger convert workflows, which we have a video on if you want to go take a look at that. We'll link that in the description. You can do a preview or a replace. So for example, if I wanted to like select this text, convert base64 encode, in the preview environment, it would just show it in this box. And I'd have the option to copy it. If I right-clicked and did convert replace base64 encode, then it just dumps it right back into the request directly. Super handy. All right, let's go ahead and take a look also at some of the other options here. We've got run workflow. I don't have any active workflows currently in this environment, but this is the menu where you would run an active workflow if you wanted to trigger some sort of automation that tests for a given thing on this specific replay request. And I've used this in the past to enhance data. So like say I'm looking at a request, it's a specific format. I have a way to enhance that request using some automation. I'll create an active workflow for it, trigger it from this menu, and then it will update and send a finding or whatever the modified version of the request. Very helpful, active workflows. Okay, we covered finding, and then also plugins. Obviously, you can trigger from here. So this one, send to match and replace, is a function of EvenBetter that will just send the specific request to match and replace with the data you've got selected right here. So if I wanted to send that, there we go. Now we're in match and replace with that in the request body. So you can trigger plugins and their callbacks directly from this right-click menu within Replay. All right, up next, let's take a look at the editor a little bit, which I'm defining broadly as this general section here. You can see we've got pretty printing down here at the bottom left-hand corner. You can't really see it right now because of I don't have it like a JSON request type, but if I put like some JSON in there or whatever, like this, you can see we can toggle on and off pretty printing for that JSON, right? Cool. Oh, okay. Yeah, freaked me out for a second there, but yeah, that's just my like catch-all response to my POC website. Sweet. So you can toggle pretty printing on and off. You can also navigate back and forth between requests that you've sent. So you can do that via these buttons up here at the top, and you can see the number down at the bottom changing. So if I switch this back to 1, we'll see that HTTP forever request from the beginning, right? Or if I jump over here to 10, we can see the one that I sent second to latest, right? So very useful for jumping back and forth within your Caido replay tabs here. Some of the other functionality that we have here includes the ability to override the server that you're sending this to directly. I've got a wild card, so I think this should still work just fine. Oh no, it's not set up correctly on my server, but you can see that it did change this specific place where the request is being sent to. You can also override the SNI specifically. So if we do x.poc.rhinerator.com here, it's actually fussing about the SNI, so maybe that's the situation there. No, it's just my Apache configuration is all hacked. But you can override those values here if you need to do some testing with a modified SNI. So let me go ahead and put this back to, I'm going to go ahead and remove that and put this back to POC so it's working properly again. There we go. And that's a lot of the main editor features that we have here. We do expose in the SDK a way for you to hook this code mirror editor. So if you wanted to create like a very in-depth way to modify the HTTP request or display the HTTP request here in Replay, you could do that via the SDK with a code mirror extension. And a good example of that is actually the display hidden characters functionality that we have up here at the top left. You can see that it's now displaying \r, as its own little entity here. These are the kind of things that you can do via those code mirror extensions. I think this is implemented using that SDK itself. So definitely some extensibility there as well to look into. So we've got some options up here. We just saw display hidden characters. We also have automatically update content length. So if you're doing like request smuggling or something like that and you don't want the content length automatically updated, you can find the setting for that up in the options at the top left-hand corner. Okay, yeah, I knew there was one more thing I wanted to cover with you guys here, and that is the drop plugin. Okay, so let's go to plugins. let's search for drop. Right here it is right here. Also written by Justin. What is that? Oh, crazy. But drop is a plugin that allows you to very easily share requests and stuff like that from user to user. So now that I've got it installed, you can see that I've got this drop to functionality here, right? So I simply register my friend's code. So like I would grab his share code, and I'd paste it right here, and then it would add them as a friend. And then if you go back to replay, you can hit drop to and select your friend, and it will go ahead and send them that request. And then they'll get a little pop-up like this where they can claim it, and when they do, it pops directly into their replay. This makes it super seamless for you to be able to collaborate with your friends or coworkers when working on a project. And it's all end-to-end encrypted. You can find the details in the drop Caido community GitHub repo. All right, so I think that's the primary, editor interface that we've got right here. Oh, no, one more thing that I did want to show you was, of course, you control enter to send your request, right? So you're in here, you're modifying stuff or whatever, you're tweaking, you press control enter, you send. Okay, no, that wasn't exactly it. Modify, and, control enter. So it's important to know these keyboard shortcuts to really become a power user with Caido. All right, so that's the editor. Next, I want to talk to you guys about a really cool piece of functionality called replay placeholders. And for that, I'm going to go grab a request from my POC site so we can see how exactly they work. So give me just a second to prep that. Okay, got it working. So this is an endpoint here, qt/dump request, that just dumps the request back that we just sent directly to the server. Okay, super standard functionality. Very easy to see how we are sending requests here and how it's affecting the actual sent request. So replay placeholders are this cool little functionality up here at the top right-hand corner. What it allows us to do is apply modifications at send time to the raw request that we have in the request pane here. So the way we do this is we go ahead and select the text that we want to do a placeholder on, and we hit add placeholder. Okay, so you can see it's populated this sort of orange text surrounding it. And if we click this little edit button, then we get a really cool panel here where we can define a set of options that we want to occur. First thing on this left-hand side is what input do we want to pass into this process. So by default, it's whatever you selected, but you also have the ability to select the whole request if you want to, and pass that as input into your workflow. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as that piece that we originally selected. And then we can define a process on how that text or that input should be transformed at the send request time. Okay, so the one that I use the most is workflow, but there's also URL encode, prefix, suffix, environment variable, that sort of thing. So we'll cover a bit of those as we go along. But for now, let's take a look at workflow. We can just select an easy base64 encode workflow and click add, and now that's been added to the actual process that will run when we send the request. So for now, let's go ahead and leave it as that. And when we send the request, you'll notice that astif isn't what's in the request body. It's the base64 encoded version of astif, right? So that transformation occurred at send time. And this is really, really helpful. I'll jump back to just full face here. This is super helpful in high friction testing environments. Like if you have a request that constantly needs to be signed, or you've got a like for example in AWS, you need to sign the whole request and generate these headers and do all that thing. Sometimes you'll see like that a request needs to be like base64 encoded and then URL encoded and then URL encoded again. You've got this super high friction testing environment. Well, you can define a placeholder, just build out that process once, and that completely eliminates your friction to testing that endpoint because you're looking at the unencoded, unsigned value, and you're not worrying about it. And then replay placeholders are, covering for you whenever the request is sent. So really awesome stuff here. I use this all the time. And I guess I didn't actually show it before, so we'll jump back in. You can also chain values here. I just want you to see that. So we've got base64 encoded here, but we could also do, after that we could do URL encode, right, like this. And we have that interface as well. And then if we send it, okay, well, it doesn't have the equal sign. Yeah, there we go. So I added to it, and you can see that the equal signs at the end are URL encoded, right? So you're able to create chains of processes like that as well. These are kind of intuitive workflows: URL encode, prefix, suffix. But environment variable is also very interesting. So I'm just going to demo that feature really quickly. So if you go to environment and you create a new environment, actually let's just use the global environment, and we'll create a new variable. We'll call it testing, or like auth header or something like that, right? And we do bloody bloody blah, and we keep it a secret or whatever, and then we update, save, and then update. Right. Okay. So now we've got this auth header variable in place, and we've got it in the global environment. Right. So we don't have to select a specific environment. We can go back to this request and modify. Go to environment variable, and select that auth header. Right. And we can add that. So I'm going to delete these other ones. Leave the auth header here, and maybe tell you what I'll do. Instead of being weird about it, I'll actually just add an authorization header here. Like this, right? This is a little bit more of an accurate example. And we'll go in here and we'll go to environment variable and we'll do auth header. And then let's say, we want to base64 encode it. Let's just do that for the heck of it as well, right? Boom. There we go. And we can hit send, and you can see now we've got our base64 encoded auth header right here at runtime. So this is a very easy way for you to sub values in at the last minute. And I've actually used this environment functionality as a database in the past, where I've had a passive workflow that is grabbing data out of the HTTP history as it comes through, like updating a session cookie or something like that, storing it in a variable, and then every time a request flows through HTTP history, storing it in a variable, and then whenever I want, when my session dies in my replay sessions, I just sub in the placeholder, and now my session's live again. Very, very helpful functionality. All right, so I think that's it on replay placeholders. Excuse me. Now we're going to shift, no pun intended here, to shift agents, which is a new feature that's coming out in Caido that we just released not too long ago. Currently, it's in its own sideload plugin. However, it will eventually be integrated into Shift, the actual AI plugin that's in the store. And essentially, the concept behind this is we are going to take an AI agent that we control the prompting for, control the system prompt, and we are going to equip it with a bunch of tools to modify a replay tab. And then we're going to delegate a replay tab to it so that it can go ahead and perform testing. So let me go ahead and show you how to get that set up. Let me jump back in here. So first, we're going to go ahead and install the plugin. By the time you're watching this, it'll probably be in the plugin store here, just like all the other plugins. So just go ahead and install the Shift plugin, and it should be there. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and install it from my operating system directly via the zip file. All right, I'm back. I've installed the Shift Agents plugin, and I'm going to show you guys how to create your own little micro agents for hacking within Caido. So this is what the Shift Agents interface looks like currently. You have to supply it with your OpenRouter API key so that it can utilize your tokens and keep the AI portion of all of this private to your specific key. And you can also define the max iterations here, so you don't want the AI to just go brrr and just run forever. Then you can just set however many iterations you want. Shift Agents comes with a bunch of little micro agents that are built in, for example, the XSS one, which we'll use in just a second. But you can also hit Add Prompt and just sort of throw in your own micro agent as needed. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to use these within Caido. So we've got our request right here. Let's say we want to go ahead and have the AI test for XSS on the specific request. So we click this agent button that appears up at the top left-hand corner when we install Shift Agents, and it will pop open this side panel where we can interact with the agent. So for now, I'm just going to keep Gemini 2.5 Flash selected. I'm going to add the XSS prompt here. There we go. And then I'll say, go for it, or whatever. And the agent will then take over this specific tab and start performing various attacks. So obviously, this is a super easy example, so take it for what it's worth. But it was able to go ahead and update the X parameter to like the super vanilla XSS payload identify that it actually has an XSS vulnerability, and then create a finding with that vulnerability right here. So we can see the actual request and response here. So this is how you use Shift agents. You delegate a replay tab, and it'll take control of that replay tab, do the testing, and you can kind of jump back and forth between, oh, what did it try? You can jump between each one of these requests to see what it tried, whether it implemented the attack vector correctly or not, and sort of have some introspection into what the agent's done. All right, I think that's the last thing I had on my list. Let me just double check that here. Yeah, that's the last thing I had on my list for replay. Hope you guys feel like the master of replay now. Let us know in the description if you have any questions, or in the Caido Discord. You can find that on Caido.io, our website. All right, we'll see you there. Peace.